Okay, so welcome to the Sunday shop update, and today it's all about clamps. So I'm just going to take you through what I use and explain why I use it and pros and cons, if there are pros or cons. Now, I'm not saying these are the best clamps you can buy, and often, as all of us, some of these clamps I've got are because of a budget or whatever. And I'll tell you, if I could afford it, which one I would have more of. But let's go through it. Okay, so starting with a clamp I don't use very often. One of these, they're about £7 from somewhere like Screwfix in the UK. Just a handy clamp, quick to use. If you're doing anything, needs a decent reach. I use those sometimes. You won't see me using it very often. It's not loads of pressure, but it's okay. The kind of standard clamp. Now, again, I don't really use these very often. If you want a lot of pressure and you've got something to push down, but the problem with these is marking of the wood. Now, you can try and get rubber feet for them, rubber caps, but they tend to always fall off. I've seen people make wooden bits that go on here. Again, but it's not something I use daily. I have a few of these just for that kind of odd job. The old quick grip, I've got 2 or 3 of these, different lengths. I just don't like it at all. I've had this for absolute years, maybe 20 years since they come out. I think the pressure's pretty bad and it's very slow action. It seems to go forward and back a bit. But anyway, it's quite old. Again, I'd avoid that. If you need a quick clamp, one-handed clamp, my favourite and the most ergonomic in terms of not taking up too much room is this one here from Bessie, surprisingly. Really good, quite a good price. You can apply pressure between the jaws, or you can flip it and actually use it to push stuff apart. It's really good. It's got a quick release. It's nice and light, really quick to use. I do like using these clamps. Usually for the beginning of a glue up, not for the final where you're leaving it to set, but very good clamp. Pressure is brilliant on this one. Next is this, while we're on Bessie, this Uni Clamp. Now, I think these are amazing value for money. For me, this Uni Clamp has replaced ever using something like this. Again, there are the odd occasion, but you get a really good pressure across the piece here, and it's a light, small clamp. Now, if we jump straight on to the king of all the Bessie clamps, which I absolutely love. This is so well made. This is the K-body clamp. I think this one is the version 2, and there's a even newer one out now. Now, this is amazing. If I had the money to stick 30 or 40 of these on the wall, I would. I think they're really well made. It's a really nice clamp to use. Masses of pressure, very handy. Keeps things flat. You get these little bits here, so you keep your stuff square and flat when you're clamping. The downside with these, the only downside I can see, is how much they cost. This one is 600 long. If I had a selection, it's very rare that I'm clamping 1200 and stuff. If I have a selection of clamps, you've got a lot of money hanging on the wall, and I just don't use them all the time. But there is nothing wrong with this clamp. I think it's amazing. On the other hand, this little version, Uni Clamp, I find this is much more convenient. So even if I had a big selection of those big Bessie clamps, they're just quite big and heavy and bulky. This is brilliant for doing most jobs, and I use it a lot. I would say that's one of my #1 clamps. So I've been asked a lot about the Dakota Clamp, and that is what spurred off the Sunday shop talking about it. Now, I don't know if people have bought these or just heard rumours. I've got to say, it doesn't feel as good as the Bessie clamp in terms of its build. But if you're only going to occasionally use them, and it's not an everyday, I've not ever had a failure or a problem with the threads or the way it moves. They can both be a bit sticky if you get any glue on these rails here, either Bessie or Dakota. Both of them can be a bit lumpy to move, which I read about. The Bessie does have this rubber, which I really like, and is a bit bigger, so there's no doubt it's better, but it's probably 3 times the price. Now, a big bonus of these clamps, I'm going to show you the pipe clamps in a minute, which are brilliant and really cost effective. As you've seen in my last video, I'll just go and get a bar. So if you're working with one of these rail systems, or it doesn't have to be a rail, but the bonus of the Bessie clamps and the Dakota is all of the adjustment is on the handle end, meaning you can slip it under work and move this away. And that's why you've seen me using them a lot in recent builds. Now, this isn't a clamp that I would use often, and to be honest, nor the Bessie. I do prefer the pipe clamps to both of these for certain jobs, and I find them a little bit lighter and a little bit easier to move. So we go on to a pipe clamp. The first problem you've got if you're doing glue ups and you need to get stuff in is you can't, because that comes up and that stays in the way. So that is a big disadvantage to these pipe clamps. This kind of leads me on to another discussion. This is the 3/4. There's definitely a place for both. You can see the difference in the size here on the head. There's quite a lot of difference. This is a much lighter unit, much easier to use on a big glue up if it's small things, little chopping boards and stuff. And this is a much more substantial, but more, you know, can be more awkward in the bigger glue ups. And that's sort of what I was saying about the ultimate Bessie clamp and the little Uni Clamp. There's definitely a place for both of those, and I often on smaller jobs I'll just use that. This just stays on the wall. So that kind of covers that clamp. And just to summarize on the Dakota, because I know everyone was asking, and that's kind of what I was going to say, would I recommend using this? I do not use these daily. I have this is 800. And what you saw in the recent build is a 1200. Now, I've only used these, I don't know, 20 or 30 times in the last couple of years. They've never let me down. I don't know if I was using them every day, they would stand up to the work of this Bessie version. And if I was using it every day and relying on it, I would just go out and buy that. But it definitely works well. I've not found any pressure with any bowing. This stays straight. It has a lot of clamping pressure here. Arguably, this handle's not as big to grab as that, so the thread is slightly coarser here, so you're probably getting more pressure. But for what I've done, this has been a lifesaver. Without these hanging on the wall, and I can't remember the price, I got these from Rutland's. Without these hanging on the wall, there's loads of places. The clamps we all know and love is like the Festool Clamp, which goes into your MFT. Most of us have got these. I'm not going to dwell. I got to be honest, these little ones here, the threaded ones, they turn up on UK Amazon quite cheap, sort of 18 quid a set. I love both of these. This does seem stronger and quicker. I love that. It's a real handy clamp though. Works brilliantly on the profile. So both of those are excellent. Again, back to Bessie, they can't seem to do anything wrong. Now, this come as a bundle, 4 of these, when I bought this set, and I got this set for about £140 for 4, and I got 4 of these included at the time, and I thought, well, they're going to be rubbish. And if you've not bought any of these or tried these, you've got to try them. This is something that I use all the time I go to it. It seems to set the correct pressure for the job. It's really quick. You see me using it all the time. They're very lightweight, really quick. I've got about 14 of these, I think, somewhere. And I would just swear by this. If I run out of these, you'll see me switching to these. And what I liked about these was that there's 3 different sizes. Because for me, when you've got like a 1 meter clamp and all your clamping is 300 mil, you've got this great big bit sticking out the back and you're walking around and banging into it in the shop. It's really cumbersome. So I'm all about adapting my clamps the best I can to the correct size for the job, and I have a selection of tubing when it comes to the pipe clamps. That is another good reason to go with pipe clamps, because you can buy these pipes really cheap, cut them yourself, or get them threaded one end, and then you've got a few clamps and loads of pipes, and if you've got the time to swap them around, that really is an ergonomic way to do it. There's the old style clamp. Now, I've got loads of these. They turn all the furniture blue unless you put tape on it. They're really heavy and cumbersome. I've actually given those to my son now, the old sash clamp, and I just use the pipe clamp, much better for woodwork personally. The aluminium clamp. Now, this is something I've probably had for 20 years. It's very light. I don't know how people work with those. It's got hardly any pressure here, loads of give in it. I'd just give those a miss and just import yourself some pipe clamps. Okay, so corner clamps. Bessie do one of these. It's quite expensive, and I saw this Stanley one and I thought, well, I'll try that first. It looks a bit like the Bessie, and Stanley make good stuff. I've got to be honest, I haven't had this work very well for me. It never seems to push the corners properly together. I would much prefer to clamp on something like this. Here, leave a millimetre gap or whatever it is you're doing, and then push the second clamp on, one of these, and this will push your corner tight. I mean, there is occasions when, you know, that's not right, but to be honest, I've found I've not used this. It doesn't work for me. This is fantastic. I come across this, again, on Amazon, and you can also see on here, this moves around to compensate for the corners. Put these soft clamps back on. You get a tiny bit less clamping pressure. I'll put links in and you can find all the specs. I don't want to take time going through all the specs, but it's plenty big enough for 18, 20 mil ply easily. And it's a surprisingly clever clamp, and 4 or 5 of these you can get stuff really mocked up quickly. When it comes to the old corner clamp, this one here, well, I've got loads of them. I don't know what you guys think, but to be perfectly honest, this is a joke. I just need to clear out my workshop and stick them on eBay or give them to the charity shop, because these are absolute pants, for me anyway. So when it comes to corners, you've seen this. This is just a simple bit of off-cut ply, which I had. Not quite thick, this one. This is 20 mil ply. I've just put some holes here. I probably could have done a different job. To be honest, the slots would have been good. This is excellent. This is absolutely 90 degrees. It's big, it's cheap, very, very good. Now, these, I'm going to put a link in. Now, I buy these on a place called Alibaba, I think it is, or AliExpress now, AliExpress. And they're surprisingly good value. I think I got 2 of those for about £15 delivered, so £7 each. They're dead square, and the reason I've started using these is the space. They're very, very small, and often the bigger homemade one is just too big. You can say you could make a small one, but once it starts to get ply and it's fiddly, I want it to be 90 degrees. These don't take up much room. They're really, really quick. I'll put a link into those. I got this from Rui. This is awesome. You can leave it loose, pop stuff down, that's not going anywhere. A couple of those. This is another thing, the Craig clamp. I got a couple of those. Okay, so this is when you're working with a rail system. I often use it. I've got a couple of rails put in here. I did have one on my Bosch drill press, but I've moved them out. I've got some more to put in, but it's really handy and it's very, very quick. Probably the best precious clamp. I've got a couple of those. They're very good. Again, Amazon, about 20 odd pounds, so really handy. So for clamping, picture frames, circles, great big things. I got a couple of these. I had a big project on recently, and this is a cheapie where you just pull round and then just screw here. This is a cheapie. There's nothing wrong with it, but I was really worried about it failing. I've had it for years, so I invested in 2 of these Bessie ones, and yes, of course, they are much better. You can use it with the corners or just take them off and just do the band. That is probably the best I've come across for clamping of like picture frame style things, boards. And the awkward clamp. So these little things, I don't know if you've seen them. I'm not sure what projects I've used them on my channel, but these are great. So what you do here, clamp that on there, clamp that on there, and you can see what's coming. You can now put this on here, and that's going to pull that really tight. If you really crank that, you can pull an awkward shape. So they're very useful. I don't know if you've come across these, but I will put a link in the description for these as well. So quite a few links today. Please check the description. Okay, that's the end of the Sunday update. I'm sorry there's a lot of talking and a lot for me to go through, but I can't quite believe how many clamps there are in my shop. It's probably going to take me 5 minutes to put these back on the wall. So any questions on the clamps more in depth, I hope I've answered them. I know this started with the Dakota question, and my answer is it is a very useful clamp. No, it is not quite as well built and probably won't last as long as the Bessie. But thanks so much for watching. I'm on 32,000 subscribers now. I can't quite believe that. It's been a lot of fun. It's getting really good. I've now got a Patreon page. You don't have to pay to go and see stuff. On my Patreon page this week, I've got a little jig I made for my Bosch router, which I know people ask about. It's a really cool little jig. It's worked out well. You just push that and clip that in there, and that's ready to go and cut circles or half circles and rounds. So if you want to see that, go onto my Patreon page, there's a link below. It's a totally free video and you can find out more about that there. Thanks so much for watching. Until the next one, see you later.